Both of us have had some of our ideas censored on some of these big technology platforms. And I kind of want to jump in and talk about that because honestly, Dolores, up until April 6th, nothing I had ever said was ever censored. You know, no one in the news had ever said things about me. No one had whispered behind my back, you know, but now once I was censored, I feel like I've kind of gone into this other world. And now I'm surrounded by people that it's kind of normal to have their work talked about in a strange way. And it's been fascinating for me to observe, and also not very fun to know that when I speak something out of my mouth, other people can say it's dangerous for other people to hear it. So I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts. Again, thank you so much for being a founding member of the Digital Freedom Platform. It means so much. You know, we can speak freely here, and it's hard to emphasize how important that is because if
I suppose I totally agree. And I suppose if people wouldn't be aware that there is an issue in science around differences of opinions in a number of areas. So people might be aware of it maybe in the UK about, say, if you want to say there's a biological difference between men and women, or if you want to challenge the debate around carbon dioxide and climate change that has been going on for about 15 years. So because I've come across these issues in my work in the universities and on the government advisory science councils, that's what encouraged me to speak up now when it comes to coronavirus, because essentially what we are being told is not how the immune system works. And they are trying to push a narrative that is not based on the decades of immunology. And when you see it in the light of around free speech or building false consensuses in science, then you can see how the media and who is interviewed on, we'll say, the BBC or big stations are actually not reflective of the science. And if we don't speak up, they are going to impose a new narrative, which is not true. So I also set up a party called Irish Freedom. I've been involved in setting it up, and I've been advocating free speech and open debate for all issues in society. So that's what encouraged me to speak up now.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the work you've done for that. I know you've run for office as well without any media support. And, you know, I never realized how much I valued freedom of speech until this happened. But my gut reaction, my knee-jerk reaction in my DNA, Dolores, was, no, this is not okay. And that's what we've been on this fight for the past 2 months to create our own platform so we can have these conversations. Because, you know, I grew up in California and in America in the 70s as a kid. You could say whatever you want. You could talk about the president. You can do anything. And so the fact we can't speak about science makes me even more kind of enraged. And I have a science background as well. But let me get this right, Dolores. Since you've been in the science community, you know there's a tendency in science and research and academia to kind of push unpopular ideas kind of away or down below the surface. And so when this came out with coronavirus, you had been used to this kind of behavior, and you said, not this time, I need to talk about it. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. So I suppose I invented or co-invented with my team high content protein arrays back in 1996, 97. And one of the first applications of that was to look at antibodies that were used in research. And antibodies are used in diagnostic tests to diagnose disease, and sometimes quite serious diseases like autoimmune diseases and cancer. So when we applied our technology, we were screening thousands more proteins. We were getting very good results. But when we were telling the scientific collaborators that, no, what you've published is incorrect, there was a lot of reluctance within the scientific community to actually correct the record, which they could have easily done because this was a new technology. So that brought me in for 20 years around research integrity and how a lot of the publications in science may not be true. And that I have been on volunteering and unpaid on the Government Advisory Science Council and in the EU to try and move towards validation of science results, and that careers should be promoted based on people putting their results and data and antibodies into open repositories so that other people can check the data. And this would enrich science. And because there's been a lot of reluctance from the funding agencies and the governments, a lot of the scientific papers are based on tools and research that are not true. And actually, I've been considering getting out of science. And that's, I think, why a lot of the clinical trials are failing, because a lot of the tools and a lot of the publications are not validated and may be incorrect. So I was able to then look at what was going on in the coronavirus, and the whole narrative is false. And maybe just for the few people who might stay for the first 15 minutes, I would like to say to them, it is very confusing. They are getting conflicting messages from eminent scientists. But from my perspective, I'm saying we don't need the lockdown, we don't need masks, we don't need social distancing. Eat well, boost your immune system. There are preventative measures, and talk to your doctors to get early and effective treatments like hydroxychloroquine and zinc. And we can re-engage in the world within a week. There is no need for the lockdown, no need for any of these new societal changes. Businesses, tourist industry, schools can open, and we can go back to work.